Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So today I have something new to share with you guys, a new series for my channel. We're gonna do this all the way through 2022, I think. Let me know if you're into it. And I'm calling it, I don't know what I'm calling it. I'm calling it my 2022 eyeshadow palette challenge. That's what we're gonna call it. Something like that. Anyway, so I thought about this back in, I would say November, December. I was, rearranging my collection, going through some palettes, going through some things, and I thought, I have a lot of eyeshadow palettes. I would say I have about 60 eyeshadow palettes. I haven't actually counted them, but that's my guess. And while I do shop my stash seasonally, every season I pull out a few palettes that sort of scream that season, and I try to focus on those for that season. In addition to doing that, I also want to do this little eyeshadow palette challenge. So I'm challenging myself to use all of my eyeshadow palettes in 2022. So I know that seems like not that much of a challenge. However, if you have a lot of palettes, you know that you tend to kind of grab the ones that are on top, or I grab the ones that are in my stash, or whatever, or the newest one in my collection, what have you. And so what I want to do is try to challenge myself to use each palette at least once and try to do a different look with that palette than what I normally do. So as anybody, I'm sure this is like a very common thing. When you pull an eyeshadow palette out of your collection, you probably do the same eyeshadow look with that palette almost. You kind of have like a comfort zone that you go to with that eyeshadow palette. I think of it as like when I go to my favorite restaurants, I order the same foods every time because I know it's going to be great. So I want to push myself out of my comfort zone a little bit this year. It's so interesting because I've had this idea in my head for a while, and it just didn't happen for me to film this video yet. And now I see actually a couple of other creators are doing similar type of ideas, maybe not exactly this, but definitely there's a theme of, I think we're all just wanting to use what we have. And even though I get BoxyCharm and I do have new products coming in every month, I do find more and more with that I'm choosing the skincare item as opposed to the makeup item when I get the choice, because I just have so much makeup in my collection and I'm not using it all. Longest intro in the world, all that to say, I'm going to go through the palettes that I've used already this year. I'm going to share some looks that I've done with those palettes, my thoughts on the palettes, and we're just going to do this from time to time. So let me know in the comments down below if you like this idea. If you do, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't already, and let's dive in. Okay, so in no particular order, I think I'll start with my Shop My Stash palettes just because those are like the obvious thing. Obviously, I've been using these. So first, we're starting off with the ABH Norvina Volume 1 Pro Pigment palette. I have been really loving this. I've done a few different looks I've done several looks with this, but I've done a few that I've actually taken photographs of. So I'm going to share those with you guys. So some of the photos that I'm going to share today are screen grabs from videos. So they're not flattering photos of me, so just be prepared for that. This is a really beautiful, colorful palette. So in, I think my speed reviews video, I actually reviewed this palette in January, and I wore this color, and I think I had some purple in there, and it was a really beautiful sort of sunsetty kind of berry eye. I really, really liked that a lot. And then the other look that I created with this that I remember to take a photo of, I actually just did this like light kind of lavender color. It's like a shimmery kind of lavender shade. I did that all over the lid, and then I just created a wing with this purple eyeshadow. It was super simple, but it was so pretty. I really, really loved that look. And then I think I took one of my Stila glitter and glows to the inner corner with that look to really add some shimmer or like sparkle, but I've really been loving this palette. I wanted to really play around with those purples just because it feels like the thing to do with this palette. And I do love like purples and blues in the winter in particular. I've been doing a lot of purple and navy nails here at the salon. So really loving this palette. I did mention in that speed reviews video that if you struggle to blend at all, this might not be the palette for you. It is very pigmented and it is a little bit tough to blend because it's so pigmented. So just keep that in mind. If you are using this palette and you're having a hard time blending, I would say make sure you're setting your eyeshadow primer down with like a powder first, and then going in with these shadows. That is going to help a little bit, but really love this, really inspired by this. There's so much that you can do with this. I know a lot of people said that they were not inspired by these palettes because they're so large and because the color story is kind of all over the place, but for me, I really like that. So really loving that. I also have the Tarteist Pro Amazonian Clay palette in my current Shop My Stash. You know, the more I use the palette, the more I feel like it's really blinding. There we go. The more I use this palette, the more I feel like it's just okay. You know, it's fine. It smells lovely. It smells like cupcakes or something. So I feel like that's the thing about this palette that brings me the most joy. I have created a number of looks with this palette, all fairly neutral. So sometimes when I was like looking through my videos, like, is that the video where I use this palette? It's hard to tell because it is a neutral palette, but I have used this sort of in conjunction with other palettes when I needed something a little bit more neutral to do like a transition color or something like that. And I think this palette is just fine. You know, the thing about Tarte is their eyeshadow palettes are very inconsistent. Even shade to shade within the palette, I find to be pretty inconsistent. I don't think shadows are the thing that they do the best. However, like I said, this palette is fine. I've done some nice neutral looks with it. There's not a ton I can do with this that's like out of my comfort zone because it is just a neutral palette. And I have really been into, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I've been really into doing like a really simple eye look and then using the dark eyeshadow as like a winged liner. And I find the darks in this palette are a little patchy to do that with. There's not enough pigmentation. They kind of dust away and you don't get like a nice crisp line. So I would say if you've had your eye on this palette, there's other better ones out there. However, I will use it. Like I said, it's in my collection. It's not like a terrible palette to where I want to declutter it, but it's definitely just okay. And then lastly, in my Shop My Stash for winter, I have the Urban Decay Stoned Vibes palette. I do love this one. So when I put this into my Shop My Stash originally, I wanted to make sure that I used each of these kind of special shades at least once, because quite a few of them I had never used, and I think the only one left that I haven't used is this blue. So I have to do a blue look sometime soon with that. But I use this kind of as a companion palette because like these and these are your only mattes, and actually this one is satin, and just the rest are so warm that you get it's kind of a one-trick pony if you only use those little 4 colors, but it's a really nice companion palette. It's a really nice palette to just kind of tap a shimmer over top of any look. So I've done that a number of times. I did that with a couple of the palettes I'm going to talk about next, where I tapped this color over top of a sort of pinky color. I have this green tapped over top of another green for another look. So I have definitely been using this one a lot, but not necessarily to do like a standalone look. The green that I mentioned was out of this palette here. This is the Butter London Natural Goddess palette. I love the packaging on this. It looks wooden. It's actually cardboard, but it's just this cute little 6-pan eyeshadow palette. And with this one, I generally tend to gravitate towards these more natural tones. I don't wear a lot of greens on my eyes. I think because my eyes are kind of a gray-blue color, greens are not necessarily my go-to in terms of like what's going to make my eye color pop. So when I pulled this palette out to use, I wanted to use that green color because again, I wanted to step out of my comfort zone, push myself to use shades that I would not normally use. And with that one, these are so pretty. They're just like really nice metallic-y kind of colors. They go on really beautiful. They blend really nicely. And so with this one, I decided to try these like one eyeshadow looks are really in right now. And as you guys know, if you're not new to my channel, I do tend to do at least 3 colors on my eyes, if not more. I do a lot on the eyes. It's the part of my makeup routine that I find the most fun. So I don't tend to do these one eyeshadow looks. So I decided, you know what, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do green and we're gonna do one eyeshadow because that's way outside of my normal sort of realm of what I would normally do. And I really liked it. So I did this color all over the lid, and then I did tap a tiny bit of this jade color over top just to give it a little bit of sparkle. I guess then it's technically not a one eyeshadow look, but I didn't add anything in my crease. I didn't do anything crazy. I didn't do anything really underneath of the eyes. And then I just popped on like a black winged liner, and I really liked the way that that looked. It was so simple, so easy to do, and I think I need to get out of my head about eyeshadow. Sometimes it's okay to just do one eyeshadow and it looks great. And then this eyeshadow palette here, so this is my MAC Self-Made palette. So these are my wedding eyeshadows. These are the eyeshadows I picked out and used on my wedding day. And I wore these recently in a video. I can't remember which video right at this moment, but I'll have a picture on the screen. And I really liked the way that this came together. I think it was my most recent declutter video. I had these on. And I do love these. I don't purchase from MAC anymore because they're not cruelty free, but I will never part with this little eyeshadow palette. I don't even really want to hit pan on any of these shadows because they have such sentimental value to me, but I did want to use, like I said, every palette in my collection, and I do have kind of a standard look that I do with these eyeshadows because they were my wedding makeup. I tend to just replicate that same look over and over. So this time I did something a little bit different. I used this color all over the lid. I used this color in the crease. Actually didn't use this color. I used something different on the inner corner, and then I did that liner trick with this darker color instead of just doing like the outer V like I normally would. And then I tapped from the Stone Vibes palette, I think it was the shade Vibes, over top to give it some sparkle, and it was really pretty. It was really, really pretty. Different than what I would normally do. Even though there's only 4 eyeshadows in this little palette, there's still ways to kind of mix and match things or place them differently on the eye to get a different look. And then I did create a look with my little Natasha Denona. This is the Ayanna palette. It's just a little 5-pan palette that I got in a BoxyCharm. I do tend to kind of, you know, stick here when I use this palette. And I think that time I did this kind of mustardy camel color in the crease, and then I did the green all over the lid, and then I did that liner trick with that dark brown, and it was really, really pretty. Again, very easy to use, easy look to do, and I didn't, like, I always lean towards these same 2 kind of brown shades in this little palette, so used like the other 3. And then I busted out my little, I'm not doing this in chronological order. I'm sure these were all in different orders than I'm going through them, but you guys don't care. So this is the Smashbox Cover Shot Ablaze eye palette. This is sort of like a similar vibe to like the Urban Decay Naked Heat palette. Came out around the same time. I actually have traveled with this a couple of times. I believe I took this to Mexico and to Cuba. It's just such a small little compact palette, and I just kind of forget about it in my collection, to be honest. But when I use this, I normally do like these 3 shades, right? Or even just like these 2. So when I used this time, I did go in all over with this shade, and then I put this kind of bronze shade all over my lid. I did the outer corner with this pinky shade. So I use this one probably every time I use this little palette, but I did a little bit of a different combo by adding the bronze in. It was, again, a really beautiful kind of sunset vibes look. Really pretty, really cute. There's other looks I'd like to create with some of these palettes. So there are going to be days where maybe I use a palette 2 days in a row, and this time I used these colors and the next time I used these colors. I'm not putting any sort of rules. This is like a very chill project or challenge, whatever you want to call it. I'm not putting a lot of rules on myself. I just want to use all of my palettes this year. So I am planning to go to the dollar store this weekend and get some little like stickers of some kind, and then I can put a sticker on the bottom of the palette every time I use it, and then at the end of the year I'll know how many times I used each palette. I don't know why I'm doing all this. I just think it could be fun. And then I have this little Milani palette. So this is like the only time I'll probably mention this in the series. This is the Milani Most Wanted eyeshadow palette in the Color Story Partner in Crime. This is my replacement for the e.l.f. Mad for Matte Nude Mood palette, and this just sits in my vanity in my top drawer if I ever am like missing a transition color or I need a neutral darker tone or whatever. This is the palette that I'm going to dip into. So I'm not going to generally be creating individual looks with this palette so much as I'm going to be using it as a companion palette to any other palette that I might be using that day that's maybe missing something. So I have used this a number of times in a number of different ways with a number of different palettes, and I do really love this one. I think it's really great. And then the last one we're going to talk about is the one that I have on my eyes today. So this is the Colourpop Dream Street palette. This was a collaboration with Kathleen Lights. This is not new. This is a little bit old. However, I do love this little palette. It's so cute. It's the perfect little size. I love like a 9 or a 12 pan palette. To me is like perfect. Huge palettes, you guys know, I like my big palettes. However, when it comes to like inspiring me to do a look, I love like 9 to 12 colors. It gives you enough variety, but not so much that you're like overwhelmed. So generally when I use this palette, I stick in this sort of neutral row right here, or I go to this kind of terracotta color. I really like these shimmers over here. But I don't think I had ever used this sort of corally red color over on this side. So of course, when I pulled this palette out today, that was the color that I wanted to use. So I went into my crease with this sort of peach color, and then I took this kind of corally red color all over the lid and mostly in this like outer corner. And then I took this kind of rose gold coppery color over like the inner portion of the eyelid, tapped that all over. I took this light color into my inner corner, and then I did my little liner trick with this dark brown right here. And I really like the way that this turned out. I think it's a really cool look. I feel like I've done a nice mixture of like warm and cool toned looks with these different palettes that I've been using. And yeah, I really like it. I really love this little Dream Street palette. I know that you can't buy this anymore, but it was such a good little palette. I would have a hard time ever parting with this. I really love Colourpop palettes. I think I don't want to say they're underrated because they're not. Everybody knows they have a great eyeshadow formula, but every time I pull out one of their palettes and use it, I'm like, oh yeah, their formula is so good. So those are all the palettes that I've used and the looks that I've created over the last couple of months that I wanted to share with you guys. I don't know how often I'll do these videos, kind of just as I feel like it, I guess. I'm gonna try harder to take better photos going forward. Each time that I use a different palette, I'm gonna try to actually like take a makeup photo, not just take a screen grab out of a YouTube video. So let me know in the comments below what you think about this video idea. Let me know in the comments down below, how many palettes do you have? And do you want to take a guess at how many I actually have? Because I could count them when I get home. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And I'll see you guys soon in another video. Bye.